Reconnect, which is, to me, my personal favorite documentary. So much meaning behind it. Should we have a look at the trailer?
Yeah.
All right.
We're in a dark age. We've lost our compass. We don't know who we are. We don't know where we want to go. What is to be done?
It's going to take some consciousness change to get us out of the box we're in.
La maldición de ayahuasca, nosotros podemos conectar con esa persona y le da cuenta dónde está la raíz del problema de él. Pues ahí se trabaja.
Sometimes I feel anxious and unappreciative of the things I have.
There's no such thing as work-life balance. There are work-life choices, and you make them, and they have consequences.
What we don't understand about psychedelics is a very thick book. They can help you orient yourself morally, but look the hell out.
You don't always get what you want with ayahuasca, but you always get what you need.
The diseases of individual are the diseases of the world. Our culture, soul, is severely wounded.
Humanitarian crisis growing by the day.
Global warming is the greatest fraud that's been perpetrated on mankind this century.
When you take these lessons in, it's kind of a process to make sure that it comes into yourself. Some of the hardest work is when you go home. Integration means bringing things into the whole person.
Maybe we should be considering that the depth of human experience is more than just material things and technology and our egos.
We all get stuck in a mold. That's what can happen with ayahuasca. You get that mold, and she fucking smashes it on the floor. Now, what are you gonna do? Now, who are you?
Heavens are collapsing. This is the time to change. If you want to raise human consciousness, there has never been a better time.
La ayahuasca nos fortalece nuestra mente, nos abre nuestra creatividad, nuestro amor, nos conecta uno a uno mismo.
So Reconnect was a really intense 18 months of my life where the plant medicine called me back. And the early viewers of London Real will know that I think it was within the first 10 episodes, I decided to publicly talk about drinking ayahuasca, which is something I'd never done before, which is a plant medicine. They say there's 1,000 years of history. It is a psychedelic, a little bit like a psilocybin mushroom or LSD. And it's designed to give you a new perspective, is what it is. It's also, for me, a very uncomfortable experience. A lot like going to see Dan Pena. I'm usually told a lot of things I don't want to hear about things I'm not doing right in my life, and there's nowhere to hide. So again, everything was going pretty good here at London Real, and Dennis McKenna, who's the brother of Terence McKenna, who was one of the most famous commentators on the psychedelic experience, who died in, I think, 2000, had been on the show, and he said, "Brian, you need to come down to Costa Rica with me and drink ayahuasca." And I said, "Dennis, what I need to do is work on my business and work on London Real." And he said, no, you need to do this. And so I flew down with my crew to a place called Soltara, which is an incredible, a place that holds these experiences. And I had 3 ayahuasca ceremonies. The second one being the single most intense experience of my life, and the single most meaningful experience of my life. And yeah, it really forced me to come to terms with what I was doing or what I wasn't doing. And then, once you do the ceremonies is where the real hard work starts. Because you get these visions of what you should be and what you need to do and all the things you're doing wrong, and then you get to come back to reality where no one knows what you're talking about and the world is conspiring to keep things the same. and it's called integration in the psychedelic community, and it's one of the hardest things to do. And I came back and I told my wife how I had seen everything we were going to change, and she thought I was crazy. I told my team everything we were going to do differently. I told myself, and then a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, it's not happening. And it's one of the most frustrating experiences. And so we tried to capture that in the movie and show that transition. And I was blessed to rope in any guests on London Real and stick them in my documentary without permission as well. So we were really fortunate to have people like Dr. Jordan Peterson on there, and Michael Pollan, and Sadhguru, and all of these incredible people, Joe Dispenza, that kind of wove into the tale. And then, of course, at the end, I went home to see my parents.
Oh my God.
And I asked them about their divorce, which was a big moment for me when I was 7 years old. And I got my dad on camera, who I don't think was very happy about that, and my mom on camera, and both asked them independently about that. And the biggest lesson I got is that they didn't do anything wrong. They were just living their lives, and I would have probably done something similar. But to me, I had just created this as a situation, and I had relived this situation and made myself a victim of this situation. And so the biggest learning lesson with Reconnect was just move on. Move on. And look at what it gave me. It gave me, I mean, if you look deep at it, Alex, I've been searching maybe for a male role model my whole life. And maybe London Real is me continuing to search for a male role model. If you really want to analyze me, let's be honest. Like, who are these people, right? There are these people that maybe I'm trying to learn from. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to fit together the pieces. And it's given me all this intensity to do this. So I have to thank my mom and my dad. They did an amazing job raising me. Relationships are always really challenging. And yeah, they got divorced when I was 7, and I took it personally. And it's something I tried to come to terms with in that movie.
Is it really worth doing that? Because a lot of people have had these traumatizing moments when they're children, and I've had them as well. And it's very difficult for me to kind of figure out, should I talk to my parents about this? Should I let go, or should I just move on? Like, what was your final lesson from that whole experience? Was it really worth doing it? Did it feel like you were releasing some luggage, or finally getting rid of something that was bothering you throughout the years?
Look, it's a good question, and it probably wasn't fair for me to put my dad on the spot and ask him that question. And I don't know if he's forgiven me. So my dad's watching. I just want to say, Dad, I love you, and I'm kind of sorry to put you in that situation, but this is what I do. I create, media that sometimes is the wrong thing or upsets people, but I had to kind of do it. And I did it for my mom as well. What it helped me do is I actually got to see it from their perspective. Yeah. My dad was just like, look, I was living my life. I was trying to work on me and support the family, and your mom and I weren't getting along anymore. And the older I get, and I have kids now, I realize it's not as simple as you think it is when you're a kid. And for me, it was this big moment in my life that I decided would redefine me somehow. Yeah. And that was a decision I made. We recreate our own past every single day. Yeah. Like, we retell ourselves the story of what happened. That didn't happen necessarily. I could tell it in a completely different way. And so that's what I did. I looked at that as one of the greatest gifts I've ever had, because it made me independent. It made me realize that I had to go get it myself. I couldn't rely on anybody to be there for me, which maybe sounds a little sad, but it also means that I'm super self-reliant. So I have to thank them for that. And also, they're great parents. They have great love. They give me great experiences. They're incredible role models. So it's like, why am I focusing on something that was between the two of them and making it about me? So I used to say to my wife and everybody around me, it's not all about you. And so that's what I was doing. So for me, it helped the process. I hope it didn't make my parents traumatized, and I put them on film and on screen, and I didn't really ask their permission either. But it helped me move on more than anything. So yeah, I think it's worth doing, honestly. It's worth doing, yeah. Because if you don't, it's always going to be that thing you haven't done. Yeah, it's like me not talking about my heroin overdose, or me not even going on the ayahuasca ceremony because I'm thinking that's going to be really hard, and I'm probably going to hear something I don't want to hear right now, and I better focus on my career. Well, but maybe that's the last thing you should be doing. Yeah. Maybe you should listen to yourself. That being said, the real work comes when you get back to the real world and try to put it into practice. I know people that have had 50 ayahuasca ceremonies. It's like, well, what are you doing? Again, I'm not one to judge about what anyone chooses to put in your own body. That's a sovereignty that you have the right. But I'm just saying, it's one thing to get the message. It's another thing to do something about it. We all live in the real world. Here's the news. And I'll tell this to all the psychonauts out there. And again, I've done episodes about psilocybin mushrooms, DMT, ayahuasca. It's all out there. So I feel you. I got love for the community. But you have to live in the real world. So if you don't take that back and meditate on it and make changes in your life and face all your own BS, then you're going to go back to the same cycle. And going back to the medicine isn't always the right thing to do. Terence McKenna said, when you pick up the phone and get the message, hang up the phone, is what he said. So you can take with that as you want. That being said, I'm coming up on 4 years since I had a ceremony, and I know I need to go back at some point. And it's terrifying, because when you walk in there, it's going to be a hard night. But it's 3 hours. You'll be back in 3 hours. You're not going to die. There's very little chance of dying. You're just going to get a lot of hard truths. It's going to feel like you maybe died about 1,000 times when I do it. And it's going to be very uncomfortable. But at the end, you're okay.
You're okay, yeah.
So for me, it's an amazing tool. Again, investigate it yourself. I first heard Joe Rogan talk about ayahuasca, and 18 months later, I'd done my first ceremony. So I processed it. I learned about it. It's not for everybody. I never encourage anybody to do it. But if you're curious, go down that road. For me, it's an incredible tool. And again, just for clarity, I went down for that ceremony after Iron Mind. And during Iron Mind, I spoke with John Joseph, who had been sober for many years. He used to smoke crack and all this crazy stuff. And I had been sober at that point for 6 months. And he said, don't do that. You'll fall off the wagon, all that stuff. But I was like, no, I don't believe that. So for me, I was able to go there, and it was worth doing. And it didn't cause me to go back to my addictive behavior. But that was me. And for me, it was really worth the risk. That's my experience.